Chicago police officer Crystal Rivera had her life taken by a fellow cop. It was done on accident. It was a horrible act. She was a 36-year-old single mother. And here's the thing, this isn't the first time in recent years that Chicago officers have fired on another officer by accident. And in all honesty, it's a training issue. Even the folks that you're going to hear in this news clip about this will tell you it's a training issue. And I'm one of those people that keeps preaching police need more training. They need more education, more training. They need to understand how to go into these situations without it becoming horrible on every level. It needs to quit being horrible. So let's first let you see what happened to Officer Rivera. Um, I hope that her family, hope that somebody is there for her family right now. Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
We begin with a breaking news update for you and tough questions in the aftermath of the death of Chicago police officer Crystal Rivera. The department of confirming now late yesterday the bullet came not from a suspect, but from her fellow officer. The confirmation adding another layer of tragedy to the department's mourning. Our Sarah Maki hearing from Superintendent Larry Snelling today as he speaks publicly for the first time since that revelation.
CPD still has not released any information about that other officer's name, age, or time with the department, but Superintendent Snelling has given some insight into his situation.
At an outreach event to build bridges between Chicago police and area kids, there is no avoiding the trauma and tragedy of the past 48 hours.
That officer is in a very, very tough place. Unimaginable what that officer has to be feeling right now.
Superintendent Larry Snelling urging against a rush to judgment.
There may be things that an officer sees that no one else knows at the time.
Police said Friday night, Officer Crystal Rivera was unintentionally shot and killed by a fellow officer while chasing a suspect through an apartment building Thursday night, and after a second person pulled out a rifle. 36-year-old Rivera shot once in the back, a 4-year veteran of the department and a mother.
And we're trying to do the best job we can, but sometimes it's maybe not the best, right?
Dr. Carrie Steiner, former CPD officer and licensed clinical psychologist, tells us the brain works differently under extreme stress.
When you're faced with deadly force, your limbic system starts to go and you are just like more of an animal and you're just reacting to things. And you're not using the frontal lobe, which is what we're using right now. You're using the limbic system, which is basically fight, flight, freeze.
These situations are rare, but not unprecedented. 2 Chicago police officers were wounded in 2021 when another officer's gun discharged during a struggle with a suspect. Snelling says this investigation continues and will likely result in changes.
This is how we create training and anything else that we need to do around these situations.
Purple and black bunting hangs across the entrance of CPD headquarters. Still no more information about any funeral services for Officer Rivera. From CPD headquarters, Sarah Maki, CBS News, Chicago.
Sarah, thanks. In this case, so far, no charges. 2 people were taken into custody Thursday night in relationship to the event. CPD and the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, or COPA, were investigating the shooting. Former police superintendent Gary McCarthy tells CBS News Chicago this investigation is likely to last longer than most because of so many complicating factors involving multiple officers.
Now, there is some training that is available for stuff like this, but you want to know where it starts at? It starts with training cops to understand their own mentality. There's something called the guardian versus warrior issue within policing. You know what a guardian is, you know what a warrior is. Well, the problem is that most police go into their job thinking that they're a warrior when they should be a guardian. And I got a clip that's explaining this, even though the particular cop is an idiot. He actually does a good job of explaining it. It's Sheriff Nanos of Pima County, Arizona. He really is an idiot. But he goes into an explanation of this. And cops need to understand first what this difference is, what the difference is between being a guardian, what it means to be a warrior, and they need to understand how to switch between those because most of the time they should be in guardian mode. They should not be in warrior mode. And they need to know how to switch properly into warrior mode. And the sad part is that the best people that we have that can cope with the decisions that have to be made while in warrior mode are combat veterans. Combat veterans go through stressful situations and they've learned what it is that military training. What we learned in boot camp as a Marine, well, I learned as a Marine, they put you through high stress situations and they forced you to do things that you had to think what you had to do, follow orders, that kind of thing. Well, the high stress situation was to prepare you for combat or for tough situations. Well, these cops are not going through any of that training. Plus, there's other kinds of training that you can go through. One thing that I don't know if the NYPD does it or not, but if you've ever seen the show Blue Bloods with Tom Selleck, Donnie Wahlberg, uh, Lou Carew, uh, Bridget Moynihan, so many great actors and actresses. They have an episode with Phoebe Newworth. If you don't know who that is, I'm not even going to. You'd have to be older to understand this reference, but it was Kramer's wife, Kramer of Tears and the Kramer Show. It was his wife. Um, she has a character, an ongoing police. The police have to have somebody monitoring them because of a lawsuit. Well, she plays the monitor, and they put her through this training that the officers go through according to the show. And I'm hoping that the NYPD officers do go through this, but she had to go through a very high stress, loud noise situation, something that will stress you out, and you have to be shooting at targets. I think all cops need to go through that. I know that there is something similar that law enforcement goes through. This needs to become commonplace. Why? Because this would prevent, like what happened to Officer Rivera. Police need better training. They need to have better education on just the psychological side of things because they need to understand themselves first. Because if they don't understand themselves and they're going to make stupid decisions, and then after they understand themselves, then they can understand the criminal. And then you send them through this kind of training. That's why I think combat veterans that have adapted fairly well back to civilian life, that they would make good police officers, and many of them do. And so let's let you hear from Sheriff Nanos. Like I said, he's like when you actually study him, he's an idiot, but he at least explains this well. I will give him that.
When I look at policing, and I've been at it for well over 40 years, and I've seen from the 70s all the way through different styles of not just policing, but managing and supervision and police work. I just think we can always do better. You know, as a boss, isn't that our job to kind of sit back and say, how can I do better? How can I improve on what we're doing today? And so when we talk of a warrior mindset and a guardian mindset. That's the culture of your organization. Naturally, it starts with the training center. Well, actually, the training center is where you put it at to grow it, but it really starts right here at the top of the organization. What do I see as a police officer? I see a police officer as someone who's out there to help you, not to arrest you every time. Do we make arrests? Absolutely. There's going to be those times. Do I need to be a warrior on sometimes? Yes. But we know now, and we've known for decades, 95% of our police force and our police actions have very, very little to do with law enforcement. Really does. See, law enforcement isn't always about enforcing the law. When we go out to a traffic accident, somebody's hurt and injured, and we respond and we take care of that injured party, that's not enforcing any laws. That's taking care of people. I go out at 2 a.m. To deliver some bad news to somebody that they've lost a loved one. There's no laws being enforced there, but that's law enforcement. I have to help somebody at every turn. In law enforcement, so much of it is not enforcing the law. In fact, very little of it is enforcing the law. It's taking care of a community. It's taking care of our neighbors and making sure people are safe. That's law enforcement. That's a guardian. Warriors absolutely need them. When you need that tip of the spear and it's really going bad, you need some warriors. But when we had the Gabby Gifford shooting, I went there. I didn't see warriors. I saw guardians, young men and women in uniform from all over this region. Fire departments, police departments, my own department, they were guardians that day. If they had to be a warrior, they would have been. But that day, they were guardians. And most of the time, that's what we are. We get there after the fact. We still have to help you. Got to sometimes pick up those pieces and make sure people are okay. Dust them off and do what we can to make them better. Sometimes you can't make everybody better. Can't make things better all the time for everyone. Little kids, we know it. We see it that my school resource officers, they've got to be out there and mentor these kids. They're not there to arrest them, and they're there to help them get a better life ahead. There's no better crime prevention than being involved with the youth of your community. And I've known that for, decades. So, that's a philosophy, a mindset that starts here, but it's got to be spread throughout the department. And you use your training center as maybe your catalyst to do that training, to get that seed and spread it out. If I do my job right, hopefully others will recognize it and see it, and they'll do their job right. It's really what it is. So I guess that's leadership, right? Lead by example. And that's what we hope to do.
Now, I know that very little will change. That's the sad part is government doesn't like changing. They want to keep things going the way that they're going because they think, oh, well, we'll just take the liability. We'll just deal with the liability. Well, the problem is that you have situations like Officer Rivera, who should not have been taken because this fellow officer couldn't handle the situation. We need training. We need education. You keep hearing, oh, defund the police. No. What we need are police with a 4-year degree that get actual psychological training, not to be psychological professionals. No, I still believe that psychological professionals need to be blended in with law enforcement. They need to be at jail intake. They need to be working with the cops, not out there in dangerous situations necessarily. But you need psychological professionals that are working hand in hand with law enforcement because it would make life so much better. It would help end so many problems. But cops need to understand a warrior versus guardian mentality. They need to understand what is going on in their own psyche. They need to understand what is happening to a small degree. They don't need to be experts, but they need to understand when they're seeing that somebody is having a mental breakdown, they need to understand what that means. They need to understand, since we've got this problem where we've got too many mental cases running around on the streets or too many drugged out people running around on the streets, how to handle that situation. Because there's so many of those folks that are homeless because, well, we don't handle that situation correctly in this country. And those folks end up getting taken out by law enforcement because, well, law enforcement doesn't understand the situation. And we're talking about nonviolent folks, by the way. We're talking, you take a look at the name Roland Hill here in Virginia Beach. Yeah, that would have been helped by people understanding mental statuses. This needs to become normal, where cops understand this side of themselves, because if this cop that took out Officer Rivera, and I feel sorry for her 10-year-old daughter, if this officer that took out Officer Rivera understood the difference between understood his own psyche, his or her own psyche, enough to understand how to properly switch over to the warrior mindset and how to not be stressed out to the point that they pull their firearm and then take out another officer by accident. Seriously, this is what needs to happen. And we need to push for this. The communities need to push for this, because it's not just the officers that are losing their lives because cops don't seem to understand what this means. We need to get to this point where cops understand their own mindset and have professionals working with them to help them control their mindset to the point that common sense starts reigning again. But hey, this is just my point. This is just my view. You can say what you want to say about my viewpoint. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So, folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.